Good evening, everyone. I'm calling this meeting of the Germantown Board of Education to order at 7:17. I ask that you join me in standing if you're able to say the Pledge of Allegiance and for a moment of silence. Official meeting notification, Mr. Holmes.
Public notice of all meetings is given by communication from the Superintendent's Office to those news media who have filed a written request for such notice and the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, Northwest Now, and Express News. Public notice has also been posted in all schools and buildings throughout the district, on the school district's website, and on the cable television channel 96.
Thank you. Roll call. Jane?
Soderberg. Medved.
Here.
Loth.
Here.
Borden.
Here.
Browning. Here. And Larson.
Here.
Thank you. Item 2, approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Discussion? No discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Citizen comments. We have several people that have signed up for to speak tonight. Will Mary Hudson please come down? Mary, are you here? Oh, there she is. Right down here.
Again? It is live? What? I'm not sure what you mean. How many persons? Oh.
Could you tell our speaker what to do with the headphones?
Yeah, if you just put those on, you can adjust the board.
Ms. Hudson, you may begin speaking.
All right. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Letter, I believe, emailed to all of you, as well as the village board, in regards to the Viridian contract extension. And I was here earlier when you were discussing it. And I guess I'd like to also bring forward, I know Superintendent Holmes mentioned about the village passing with a provision about buckthorn, which I guess is valid. But there was also a provision stating that if Viridian does not move forward within 12 months, the residential provision would go back to the A2 agricultural. And I just wanted to make sure that the school board was aware of that provision. That was passed along with the RS4 by the board, was it April 6th, I believe? So that was a provision. So if we do extend the Viridian contract, it is in violation of that and would therefore potentially move it back to the agricultural status. So just wanted you to be aware of that. And the fact that I know Viridian, it took a while to get everything passed as is, but a lot of that was because of the citizens of Germantown who are against building at all. There's quite a lot of them out there, me included. And I feel like, if Viridian can't uphold their commitment, then maybe we need to walk away from this at this point. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mary. And we are cleaning and sanitizing the headsets too, by the way. Jan Miller. I'm sorry, Jan? Can we go what? Well, sure, Sandy. That's fine. You're most welcome.
They're all clean. You can just pick them up.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Sandy Dobrogowski, and I live in Heritage Hills subdivision. I'm against allowing Viridian the contract, allowing them an additional 12 months to begin. And I'd like to just bring forward a few points. One is the concern with the dirt piles, etc., that would be sitting on the property, and the citizens around that area, especially because of our winds, are going to experience prolonged exposure to dust and dirt. And for those citizens with already compromised respiratory conditions, separate to and including COVID-19, this proposes increased risks. Number two, as this property sits, again, considering our winds, we'll not want to have our windows open in our homes. The inside of our homes will be laden with dust. And again, it will not be pleasant to sit outside as we get dirt and dust blown upon us and our cars and anything we have outside. And for those citizens that are fortunate enough to have pools, this will be extra work on their pools, on their filters. And along with that, I tie in the splash pad at Kinderberg. We will turn into a little mud pile the longer this extends, and to consider who's responsible to clean that and pay for that. So with these health and quality of life considerations, you do not allow this project to be prolonged. My question is, when do the concessions stop? I would ask if they would stop now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, sir.
Jan, would you like to come up now?
Thank you. Is there a left and a right?
Good evening, school board members. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Well, I'd like to discuss the proposal of Viridian Homes. I understand this has been a big angst for the school board, and I will tell you that I came before you in January of this year and asked that perhaps there is a better solution. But aside from that, today we have to discuss and vote on the current contract. So you went to the trouble of having the said Donges Bay Kinderberg Park land appraised in the 2016-2017 timeframe. The appraisal for the property, almost 15 acres, was $690,000. There was a contract, and the reason this was important for the school board to sell this property was they said they needed the money for the budget. Do you have the money? No. So what happened then? You still had your deficit. In 2018, you issued a notice of claim to the village board. And oh, by the way, I've been going to the village board meetings just about regularly for the last year and a half. Not tonight because it's the same night. The notice of claim was for $540,000. It still exists. So what happened was, at the same time, a new contract, an amended contract to Viridian Homes was signed by you, the village board, for $150,000. So currently, you're selling 14.7 acres of Kinderberg Park Health. It's not the land, but you're selling 14.7 acres for $150,000 to Viridian Homes. In 2019, you may or may not be aware, this time in April, there was a lot of dumping of fill by Viridian Homes on the property, the 14.7 acres. They do not own the land, you own the land. So I can only believe that you let them dump fill on the land. They created a ramp with huge rocks that get in the way. There's drainage when it rains a lot, and it's not pretty. So here we are. So the bottom line is they have a signed contract from 2018, and now they want to, of $150,000 for 14 acres, and now they want to extend the contract for another year. And I listened to Mr. Cudney. I guess he had to leave. Pardon me. And it seems that they were very much willing to build. They were very excited. And now that the market has turned, there just doesn't seem to be that excitement. So the big challenge that the residents surrounding the Kinderberg Park property have is that we really didn't notice that it was up for sale for a single family subdivision. We didn't really notice it, but once we did, we fought against Viridian. Why? They wanted to dump 30 homes. 30 homes they wanted to build in 14.7 acres. And by the way,
Ms. Miller, could you keep your comments to the your extension, please? We know all the history here, but please keep your comments to the extension that's
Sure.
on hand. Thank you.
Sure. So what you're looking at in your contract right now went from, and the reason it took so long is because homes to 27 homes to 24, now we're at 16. So the contract is for RS4 only 16 homes. That's all that the village board has approved. And we still have a pile of dirt. There's no commitment or promise for them to start working on this. And their excuse is COVID. Well, I know for a fact my son is buying a home, a brand new built home. Building homes is not stopping. Building homes, there are 3 other subdivisions that are being built at this time in the Germantown area. So if you're concerned about income, you're going to be getting it. If you continue to allow Viridian Homes to keep changing the contract, they will do it. They'll come back in a year and say, oh, we broke a fingernail. We got to change the contract. So you have to stand up for the residents who are your employers who want this either done or done. They've got to start digging or they've got to move on. So my request is that you vote no for this extension on the amendment.
Thank you. Thank you. Bob Fitzgerald? Good evening. Welcome.
W148 and 10247 Windsong Circle East. I just wanted to talk to you tonight about the Kinderberg Dodges Bay property and a concern that I have. Given the, and I know that this repeats quite a bit of what has already been discussed tonight. We couldn't hear everything that the representative from Viridian Homes was saying, but I picked up a little bit here and there. Because of the current, the virus situation and the uncertainty about the economy, there seems to be an awful lot of concern about a rather significant, we've, seen a lot of people lose their jobs, get laid off and so on, and businesses close. I think we've seen the worst of it yet. And what happens after a recession is one of the first things that really hits hard is the housing, new construction and the housing market. And I can see that Viridian is very concerned about that. And we as residents of Germantown ought to be concerned about it too. I have the experience because of a number of job changes and corporate relocations and whatnot. I've lived in quite a few different places. And two of the places that we lived in, we moved into right after a recession and moved into areas where there were subdivisions that had been started. And in both cases, the contractor had gone bankrupt as a result of the recession and the housing situation. So we were consequently left with foundations that were put in the ground and never completed, dirt piles that the kids had made into neat ramps for dirt bikes and so on, and a general blight on the community. And what I would want to urge you to do is to consider whether, well, first of all, it's not really clear to me from the letter that I saw what commencing construction means. Does it mean cutting a road in? Does it mean getting a couple of houses started and so on? And to make this brief, what I would suggest is that there be some kind of an agreement or stipulation that whatever gets started in the next 2 years gets finished in the next 2 years. Whether it be half a dozen houses, but they got to be ready to be sold in 2 years and maintained. Or else if it's cutting in the roads get cut in, all the utilities are put in, and the property is maintained. Otherwise, these places it can be a horrible blight on the community. The two of the places where we lived, it ended up being a real chore on the local law authorities and the tax people. Every part of the town got affected by it. I would just want to ask that you consider all that and see what we can't work out with Viridian. They've got the same concern that I think a lot of us do. And for the sake of, our pride or whatever, let's not go rushing into this and just say, a deal is a deal, let's do it. Let's see if we can't work out something so that we don't have a blight on the community. Okay? Does anybody have a question or comment? Because I feel very strongly about it. we walk over in that area. We do our cardio walk every morning, and we walk around the rocks and whatnot that are on the sidewalk from the work that they've done so far. And I'm very concerned that they're not going to be a good neighbor if they get started on something and they can't finish it. Are they going to make it look good and, have it be up to the standard, the Germantown standard? Okay? Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Last on the list, I can't read the first name, but I believe the last name is Pearson. Piers. Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Sure, come forward, please. And I apologize for the coming down and putting the headsets on. We will have a better solution. This is not working. It's not user-friendly for all. So I apologize for that. But believe it or not, it's a lot better than the first time we did this. So, good evening and welcome.
I'm not used to this. Can everybody hear me? I can't hear myself. Sorry.
Could you say your name, please?
Lily Beth Yao. It's Lili, B as in boy, ETH, YAO. And I apologize about that.
No worries.
All right. I want to say real quickly also, I concur with Mr. Fitzgerald's concern, but I won't touch on that. He was very eloquent about that. So good evening, school board president, board members, and district staff. My name is Lily Beth Yao, and I am a 25-year resident of Germantown and a great supporter of many school district initiatives. It has come to my attention that Veridian has submitted a request for an amendment to its offer to purchase of the land south of Kinderberg Park from the school district. Veridian is requesting that the provision allowing the school district to repurchase the land if the buyer does not break ground on the property within 1 year of closing be extended to 2 years. As you might be aware, there were a number of residents who, through an arduous process, prevent the land from being developed in keeping with the 2020 land use plan, and ultimately got it rezoned to RS4 with a 16 plat layout. Now, with the buyer's history of dumping fill on the land prior to acquiring ownership and encroaching upon residents' pathway to the park, and in an effort to prevent the land from sitting undeveloped and potentially continue to be an eyesore after the rezoning takes effect, the village board, taking into consideration residents' concerns, voted to put language in the developer's agreement requiring that the project must commence within 1 year of zoning approval. Voting to approve Veridian's extension request tonight would jeopardize this effort and protection. I respectfully urge you, the board members, to vote against Veridian's request for a time extension to break ground on the development. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak tonight? Okay, moving on to item 4, approval of the April 27, 2020 Board of Education minutes, the April 27 closed session minutes, and the May 11. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve the April 27th board and closed session minutes, as well as the May 11th closed session minutes.
Second.
I will second.
Tom? Amanda?
Amanda.
Okay, Amanda, thank you. Discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion
Aye.
carries.
Aye.
Moving on to item 5, reports and updates, student representative update. Mr. Holmes.
Yes, tonight we have with us Avi Bavshar. If Avi would be willing to, I think he can actually report from right there, I do believe.
Yep, can you guys hear me? Perfect.
Yep.
All right, let me get this open. On May 7th, MacArthur hosted its first virtual trivia night for students with kindergarten through 2nd and 3rd through 5th grade sessions. Students were invited to answer trivia questions that staff provided based on their experiences and memories. Led by their coordinated arts teachers, the school community had a wonderful evening with laughs, getting to know each other, and fellowship. As we begin to conclude the school year, MacArthur staff and the MacArthur PTA are looking at ways to end their time together in safe, creative, and fun ways. Last week was Teacher Appreciation Week. The Rockfield PTA encouraged families to celebrate staff by doing many things from home. families spread the love and also did a raffle for their staff. Others are in the works to celebrate relationships between the school community. The PTA is hosting the spring marathon virtually to run at home and submit laps. Those that participate may receive medals this year for completing either a half or full marathon. Finally, last week the principal hosted a parent-principal Google Meet, which allowed parents to connect with each other and offer feedback directly to the principal. Amy Bell had library book drop opportunities last week for families to turn in books that students have finished reading. Had a booster night at Marco's Pizza on May 12th. Many families participated by getting takeout, and the restaurant donated a portion of the proceeds to the PTA. That Thursday, Amy Bell coordinated arts teachers, reading specialist, math interventionist, school counselor, and principal virtually with the fourth graders. The students were broken into groups, and each adult led one group through some fun games. This was planned after students told staff that they missed seeing friends from other classrooms and will be expanded to other grade levels moving forward. Amy Bell's staff also held a drive-through parade for families to say hello to staff members. County Lines, PTA, and families did a phenomenal job recognizing their teachers during Teacher Appreciation Week. They surprised staff with yard signs, gifts, and electronically delivered gift cards. The staff culminated the week with a teacher car parade that went through all of the County Line neighborhoods. Students created signs, decorated their driveways with chalk, and prepared treats for the staff. Teachers, students, and families have settled into a good routine for distance learning as well. And many of the earlier challenges no longer exist. Families to balance work, being caregivers, and helping with schoolwork are very real. Just to modify what they can to help them. KMS students and staff continue the distance learning journey, working together for a strong finish to the year. The staff report that many students are attending Google Meets to discuss assignments, ask questions, and share work with one another. House leaders continue to meet weekly to voice the positives and challenges they are facing, as well as to give input to administrative team decisions. Many teachers are soliciting input from students on ways to make the distance learning experience more efficient and effective as we move through the remainder of the school year. Many GHS organizations have conducted executive board elections for the upcoming year, and students taking advanced placement courses are busy with 2 weeks of AP exams, which end on Friday of this week. Both FBLA and Destination Imagination are preparing for virtual national and global competitions. All senior spring student athletes will be receiving a plaque from the activities department as well. The senior ball has been canceled, and the junior prom has been moved to November 14th, 2020. On a more positive note, yard signs were the theme of this month at GHS. On May 1st, the seniors had an opportunity to pick up yard signs and any academic letters or pins they've earned. Teachers, counselors, and administrators were there to help with distribution. For Teacher Appreciation Week, the high school administrators placed yard signs outside of staff members' homes, thanking them on behalf of all students for everything they do. That's all I have.
Great. Very good. Questions, comments from my colleagues? Okay, well, you're more than welcome to stay. Or if you want to leave, that's okay.
I'm able to stay today.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Quick question for you. What's your plans next year?
I'm going to St. Louis University, and I'll be studying healthcare management and pre-med.
Wonderful. Have you heard from the institution yet, whether or not they'll have virtual or in-person teaching?
Yeah, so the city of St. Louis opened up, so I mean, legislatively, they say that they're looking fine, but they said that they might end up doing hybrid classes, and they still have a lot to figure out, so I'm still waiting. Yeah.
Interesting times. So thank you again. Awesome job.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item B, legislative update. Mr. Holmes.
Yes, tonight we have with us Representative Dan Knodel out of Hartford. He's going to come and share with us some interesting news in regard to what's going on at the state level. Have fun with that.
Good evening and welcome.
Well, good evening. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Holmes. And it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'll start off tonight by welcoming and congratulating those that won their races to serve on the school board, and those that are returning and new folks. Thank you for coming forward to serve the community. And we'll thank those that are departing, that are in the house and not in the house. I'm not sure where everybody is tonight, but I want to thank those folks who are leaving and appreciate their service to the Germantown School District. So we're in a little bit different world than we have been for a number of years. I've served in the State Assembly for 12 years, and will also be seeking a re-election, so I'll be in front of the voters in November. I'm a Germantown resident, Ridgefield Court, for over 20 years, and represent Germantown, Menominee Falls, Mequon, Round Deer, River Hills, and Glendale. So parts of 4 counties and 6 different school districts. So the thing to talk about tonight, or at least bring up for initial discussion, and we could have probably hours of discussion about where we're at here in the state of Wisconsin, not only with our physical health, but with our financial health. And I'd be happy to meet with any of you at any time to continue the discussion, or if there's another forum that you would find beneficial, I'd be happy to attend. So with the current situation, as far we've kind of moved from being under very strict order from the governor, and that's primarily focused on our physical health, and that has now expired, and that now has been basically the turned over, at least for this point in time, to the local government, particularly counties. Counties are in a branch of state government, and counties are uniquely qualified to respond to health crises. So Washington and Ozaukee County share a health department, and they have been very forward about saying that they are prepared and they can address a health crisis if we would have a localized flare-up or outbreak of COVID-19 here in the county, that they would be in a position that they can address it, a quarantine type situation, tracers to respond to where people have been, who they've been with. So it's really all in place here in Washington County, and the county has put out documents to say that they are prepared to go forward. So the state's role then would be to make sure that they have the tools necessary at the state level, and then onto the local level and finances to address and continue in their efforts to monitor this situation. So that's where we are right now. In the economic world is, I think we're just perhaps haven't even begun to see the crisis that we're going to be facing. The state of Wisconsin entered this period of time with near $1 billion in a rainy day fund, with projected surpluses of over $600 million, a word there. And those 2 areas, I at least personally believe, will be exhausted with because of the lack of revenue now coming into the state coffers. So the one being a projected surplus, again, was just a projection, so we don't see that happening. The rainy day fund is there for these type of purposes, for emergency or rainy day purposes, so it's very likely that we'll have to go into that fund to address our current obligations in the budget. So then this comes to you here at the local level. The state has obligations in our 2-year budget, which will enter the 2nd year of that budget come July 1st. And we will have our hands full to just try to meet our obligations that we've already passed in the current budget. So we have seen primarily the tax revenue to the state is sales taxes and income taxes. Those are the big drivers. We know that both of those are going to be tremendously impacted, and that means way down. So the sales with all the businesses that are closed, and weren't able to collect, sell, and collect sales taxes, so those funds have evaporated. In income taxes, with the people, the large amount of people that have been laid off and are not working, won't have income. Thus, no income taxes. So they can't give you exact numbers on this, but the projection starting to get work on those, but it's not going to be good. So what the speaking from now is my position in the state assembly. I'm the chair of the Republican caucus in the state assembly. I have had a standing invitation extended to Governor Evers to address the Republican caucus in the state assembly whenever, wherever he would like. We'd be glad to meet. He's come to the caucus one time shortly after being sworn in to office. But it will take it'll take the work that we'll need to work together to address this financial situation that we're now going to face. Quite likely, we'll be having to do what we would call a budget repair bill. So then we would address the lack of finances coming in and our budget obligations going out, and how we can try to get those to balance. The Assembly caucus that I chair, so the Republicans, have already put forth a proposal, if you will, or at least some initial discussions with the governor and to our joint finance committee, that we freeze spending at the current level. So we would freeze spending where we're at in this year's first year of the 2-year budget. What that would mean for our school district is you would not see the increases that are in the second year of the budget. So now this hasn't happened yet, but this is what we have offered to consider. So that right immediately would affect you, that looking into your after July 1st into that second year of the budget, that you would not see those per pupil increases, whatever other increases that are there in the second year of the budget. So I want to be upfront with you and let you know that is where at least a proposal is coming from the Republicans in the state assembly. And we don't know. We haven't heard of from the governor, or we really haven't just got to that point yet. I think with strong numbers to really know what to expect and what we'll be dealing with revenue. So, but it's a concern for all, and you're going to be faced with it. So perhaps the finance committee will be very busy, and I would just ask you to be very prudent, conservative in your spending and in your own budget going forward. So I think I'll just leave it right there. And again, I can follow up with any of you individually or as a group, however you would choose to proceed. And we should definitely be talking about it. Or let me throw the last thing in, because we talked about the start date. So I certainly would hope, from my perspective, that the students are in the buildings come fall. I would be thrilled to see or hear from you and the other school districts what your feelings are about a start date. I've been on the bill for a number of sessions now to have the start date being flexible, and that should be up to you, school district. Perhaps the start date should really be 2 weeks earlier, so you can get the students in and bring them up to speed, so to speak. But that is something I'm going to need to hear, and would really appreciate hearing from the school districts in the assembly district. And I'm sure there will be differences of opinion just in this part of the world that I represent. But I've got to hear from you, and I'll certainly go to bat for you and your wishes on when that school start date should be and what would work for you. And we know that Germantown has done a great job and made tremendous efforts to try to keep the education going on for this current school year. Quite frankly, a couple of school districts abandoned their mission to provide education throughout the balance of the this school year. I'm glad that was not Germantown's situation. So whatever we can do so you can get back to your mission of educating the students and here in your facilities, that I'd be right up front trying to help you out and doing everything I can at the state level. If it requires a state change in state statutes, or perhaps there can just more flexibility given to you at the local level, I'm there with you on that. So we'll leave it there. And Mr. President, I'd be glad to return.
Thank you very much. Before I open up to my colleagues, I want to thank you, Representative Knoll, for being here tonight and sharing this information. We've been talking about the concern that we have at the board level on with the 36 million people in the United States unemployed. I don't even know how many people in Wisconsin are unemployed. The impact that's having on revenue streams at all levels, and what does that mean for us? So I appreciate you going to bat for us. I think we're going to disagree in terms of what your first proposal is from the Republican caucus, because we're looking for dollars. We've been very prudent in terms of how we're spending our dollars, but we've got to run the district. We've got to teach our kids. 4,000 kids in the community. Wonderful friend of the Germantown School District in the past, and I know you're going to bat for us in the future. And if there's anything that we can do to facilitate your mission, let us know. I mean, we heard from Mr. Fitzgerald talking about some property on Doungess Bay. I mean, I'm very concerned about are we borderline recession? What impact that has on our state, our country, and our community. Very concerned about that. I'm very pleased with what happened last week with the Supreme Court decision. It appears we're now going down the path of smart, thoughtful, and common sense and opening up the country, opening up the state. We're not stupid about it. We still need to practice social distancing and do all the things that we need to do, because COVID-19 is a very serious matter. If you're in that high-risk category, very serious matter, and it's having a tremendous impact on the mental health, increased suicides, increased domestic violence, yet alone the financial side of the house. So I guess I have a question for you. Did you get any clarity from the federal level? Meaning there's a lot of stimulus packages out there, and there's one right now which I don't think is going to clear the Senate. Certainly the administration is not going to sign a $3 trillion stimulus bill. But what dollars are you getting coming from the federal government to the state level? And are you going to, I guess, repurpose those dollars, cascade those dollars to other entities?
Our Joint Finance Committee did just approve $175 million to go to the schools for virtual, towards virtual learning and teacher education in their efforts to teach in that regard. We do have, the state of Wisconsin is scheduled to receive nearly $2 billion from the federal government. The governor really has sole discretion on the spending of those dollars. I'm sure he's going to spend them, but he really has sole discretion. So your efforts you also need to make a very serious and continuous effort directly to the governor, so that, and I'm sure a good chunk of those dollars will flow. But that is under his discretion. There'll be some approvals by our Joint Finance Committee. But those are the dollars that we should focus on immediately. And so, of course, a budget has a lot of areas that are all expecting to get dollars. And but those are some of the dollars that will be plugged in to replace our loss of revenue. But to definitely make the effort to directly stay in contact with the governor. So I'm sure you're making those outreach efforts.
Great, thank you. And again, you've been a friend of the Germantown School District. We've had a number of conversations, not only on school financing, but on mental health issues, school security issues. So again, I applaud you for your efforts and keep up the good work.
Well,
for my colleagues.
Yes, Representative Knoll, thank you for being here this evening. I had a couple questions around finance, but your opening comments pretty much covered what I was looking for, that things aren't looking good. To respond to your question about should we be in school in the fall, at this point, I'd like to see students in the classroom right after Labor Day. Doing wonderful things with distance learning, but I think the kids will get a better education being actually in the classroom.
Okay. I had a little bit of echo there. Was there a question? I think I got this.
No question. Just a comment that, from my perspective, I'd like to see him in the classroom come Labor Day.
Right. And,
Mr. Soderberg, may
yes.
I ask Representative Knodel one question?
You may.
Representative Knodel, again, I want to echo what everyone else has said. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to be here and speak to us and the Germantown School District community in regard to the things that you get to witness at Madison. For me, I need a clarification in order to provide more information to the incoming superintendent and our new business manager. When you talk about the freezing of the second year of the biennial budget, is that a first step that the legislature is looking to do, or do you feel like that is a worst case scenario?
Personally, I would consider it a first step, and that's just the feel that I get with the lack of revenues that we're going to be experiencing. So it's something that we simply thought it was prudent to put that forth at this point in time against just the proposal. And but it's a start to address the budget where their dollars will not be there. So that's just one of the ideas that we're considering.
Well, thank you so much for your honesty there. The second question that I would have is in regard to those federal dollars. I too will be reaching out to the governor's office in regard to those discretionary dollars. However, given everything that I currently know, to Mr. Barney's point, to the board's point, I think I've heard the board say they would like to have all students by the beginning of the fall. And I echo that. My only issue with it is in regard to what I know is going to need to put in place in regard public health emergency mitigation measures. For me, knowing what I do about our district, that you would like be asking too much of the district to pay for the things that will need to be done to take care of kids in this type of situation. Do you foresee where the legislators and the governor's office may be able to work with school districts to make sure that, to your point, because of what's taking place in terms of tax revenues and the lack of those dollars coming in, there will need to be help, probably on a federal and state level, to help all school districts in the state of Wisconsin prepare for opening up in the fall, because we do know that it will add to every single school district's budget to do the things that will need to be done to deal with public health emergencies in place and all the social distancing and other mitigation things that need to be put in place.
Well, I can commit to you that I fully understand that, and we'll pursue that, as I mentioned earlier when we talked about the counties being at the forefront, really the rapid response team, if there be a flare-up or continuing procedures to be done. The state has obligations. The state has obligations to provide the tools necessary, or the authority, if you want to call it that, for the county to be able to react, and that could be the same for school districts. And then the funding, as that's a tool as well. So it has to be there. Out of that 1.9 billion, I would expect that that a percentage of that should definitely be set aside or directed directly to the counties and to the school districts to address those exact things that you bring up. Sure, there's going to be unforeseen expenses. Correct. You have to try to ramp up and put in places protective for your students and for your staff. There's going to be a cost to that, and so I recognize that and make that commitment to you that we will. At least I will make an effort. I'm one of 99 when it comes to voting in the state assembly, but I'll make that commitment to you, as well as all the school districts in the 24th Assembly District. And I have a granddaughter that will be entering this Germantown School District come this fall, hopefully on time, and we want to make sure everything's in good place for Miss Riley.
Thank you.
Further comments, questions? Okay, well, thank you again. Wish you nothing but success and be safe.
Thank you.
Moving on to item C, update on distance learning. Mr. Holmes.
Yes, the board was provided with a background document, and all those individuals that have taken part in providing you that background information are available here at this meeting this evening. So I will open it up to the Board of Education to please, if you have any questions or comments that need to be shared with any of those individuals, please do so.
Thank you. I don't want to do what we did last board meeting where we had them speak because we had difficult, and that's not good for anyone. So I'll just take comments, questions from the board, and we could draw on them individually, if that's okay.
I just have a quick comment to the principals and, to our teachers most specifically. Thank you. Thank you for all of the hard work that you guys have put in. We're really proud of you. We know it's a lot more time than any of us anticipated, but we appreciate all that you do. So along with Teacher Appreciation Week, thank you.
Further comments, questions? Okay.
Mr. Soderberg,
yes.
There is one thing that if you have no questions at all for those individuals, I do want to present a video tonight in regard to those efforts over the last several weeks. I will ask that everybody who is in the building right now to please mute your mic. If you are in the building right now, make sure that your mic is muted. And dear board members, you will have to watch this on the big screen behind you. So with that, if you would.
Here comes the comeback, and just as we lay together, something steady. Don't need you back, I'll find your ready. And just when they think there's nothing left running on empty. Oh, 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 here comes the comeback.
here that the dystopian fiction we'd be reading would just feel warm up in real life right now. In the winter, we read an article about the people were in quarantine in China, but what did it affect us? We learned that in Spanish, coronavirus crowd. Only 1 month after this lesson, all the schools were shut down, with barely a time to say goodbye. On March 13th, we were a nasty surprise. The extended spring break was first, but March came with April, and all hope for normal life. Governors scrambled to figure out what to do, and discovered a safe, deviant solution. In a life filled with evils, there's always hope. Taught us in Pandora's box. And recently, began to refocus. Hope. School is online now. Masks hide our smiles. Normal. Like we'll be social distancing in a while. But in the face of the unknown and the inconvenience ahead, we think of others and of a virus we must not spread. Share trouble and doubt. But it's been spinning for centuries. Things have always worked out. So, the time will soon come when we can meet face to face. And when it does, don't shy away from the government warm embrace.
So, as school board members and others will notice, there's been quite a bit going on over the last several weeks. I greatly appreciate the efforts of Mr. Aaron Gaskell that put together that video for the board's consideration, and it is posted to our district website that people may take a look at it as well. Again, I go back, the update on distance learning, to me, I greatly appreciate the board asking for those. I do read each one of those individually, and I want to commend those individuals for the work they've done to help guide their respective areas. And as indicative of that video that you just watched, again, you know, I know I'm only here till June 30th, but I tell you what, you got good people in Germantown School District, and they do work hard to bring the best they can with the resources they have available to them.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes, for sharing that wonderful video, and also for all of our colleagues that are on the other side that put the report together. To Amanda's point, you guys are rock stars. You're doing a wonderful job. And also a shout out to all the moms and dads, too, and all the students as well. This is something that we weren't expecting, but I think we're doing a wonderful job dealing with it. I don't want to say it's the new normal, because I hope someday that we'll be back here. We'll have this auditorium filled up. I know Heather wants this auditorium filled up with people. We want the field house to be going. We want the pool to be going. We want the football stands to be full for football. We will get there. We're going to have to take baby steps. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. But again, from a facilitating and moving forward with our mission of learning, we're doing that. We're just doing it a different way. And we're very creative, so I applaud the administration, I applaud the staff, students, and the moms and dads. You're all doing a wonderful job. So, comments, questions? Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Moving on to item D, special education parent meeting update. Mr. Holmes.
Yes, I know that Mr. Soderberg, who is now the special ed at risk and gifted and talented board representative, attended the recent special education parent advisory committee meeting along with Director Todd Lamb. At this juncture, I would look to Mr. Lamb to please provide an update.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Holm. Can you hear me? Last week, Tuesday, our Special Ed Parent Advisory Committee held its most recent meeting, and the meeting was well attended by both parents and staff with distance learning as our primary topic. And the intended purpose was truly to identify current successes as well as to obtain some constructive improvements for future planning. And parents were overwhelmingly appreciative of all the efforts that staff have made. They commented that they appreciated staff working with them to identify what was most meaningful for them during this time and their children. The parents even reported learning more effective strategies for working with their children than they had previously known. And despite some feelings of being overwhelmed by some of the initial communication, they did find that staff were very helpful for them in terms of trying to filter that communication to, again, be effective with their children. The suggested improvements really primarily related to that $1 million challenge for all of us during this time is to offer additional opportunities for social interaction and to make sure we're doing what we can to be providing for emotional development from a distance. It was very well appreciated and will be further shared with our colleagues for future consideration and planning.
Great, and I'll comment that I am the board representative on the committee, and shame on me, this was my first time attending one of these parent advisory committee meetings, which have been going on for quite a while. I learned a lot, and my role was more or less just to listen and to do what I can to be an advocate for the parents and the children. Todd, when you first kicked off the meeting, I don't know who mentioned this, but positive and solution-focused, main goal of the committee being consensus and family-centered. And I heard nothing but positive comments from the moms and dads and staff. Yes, there's challenges. Yes, there's opportunities for improvement. But we'll identify those and move forward. But when you hear comments, not from staff, but from the moms and dads, and I believe there were 27 attendees on the call, kids are more resilient, they're more adaptive, rocking it. That's pretty cool stuff when you're a school board member and school board president. So I'm very proud of what I heard. Again, I want to thank you, Todd, for inviting me. And I look forward to, I believe these meetings are every quarter. Is that accurate?
Approximately 5 times a year, every other month throughout the school year, okay. Typically.
Cool. Now, do we record these? Because I would welcome my colleagues hearing. I know hopefully someday we'll be back in the 4 walls of a room, but are these recorded or what's the cadence on that?
The advisory committee meetings are not recorded.
Okay.
We do keep notes, which are accessible to those who weren't able to be there, but they're not recorded.
Okay, got it. All right. Well, thank you very much. Comments, questions? Okay, thank you. Moving on to building committee. Brian.
Mr. Medved? Yeah, I think, can you check?
There we go. Can we hear me now? Okay. The building committee did meet earlier this evening, and this discussion and action of the proposed revision of the Veridian buy agreement is the only actionable item we have this evening. And we had several items of discussion. Mr. Holmes, I have a question on that. It was brought up that we have at Veridian Homes in the agreement with the village, after 1 year, it will revert to an agricultural zoning. Is that correct? Can we verify that?
When I called and spoke to the village administrator today, he said that in the minutes that the village board of trustees passed the plans provided by Veridian for a 16-lot development, with the provision that they were going to have to kill the buckthorn and they were going to have to maintain 16 lots only. I do know that there was discussion by the board in regard to those other provisions, but I don't believe any of that was actually captured in the minutes based on my conversation. I can verify that with him. And inclined, I could read to the board now, based on everything that I've heard at this juncture, a possible resolution for you to consider.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, here, let me try it. After consideration of Veridian's request to extend the groundbreaking of the Donjas Bay single-family residential development from 1 year to 2 years, the board has determined that a resolution authorizing and approving sale of real with only the offer to purchase and amendments prior to May 15th, 2020 in effect may be executed on or before May 20th of 2020. Further, the board would authorize the district administrator to work with district's legal counsel to provide language in regard to potential changes to that agreement should public health emergency orders be in place in the future.
Okay.
Essentially what that does is it negates their request for the extension. However, based on what I heard at building committee and what I've from everyone at this juncture, that would be my recommendation to allow for those negotiations to take place.
That sounds good to me. Do we have feedback? Do we want a motion to that effect, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, you would. You would need to do it.
Okay. Before we open up discussion, and will we have a motion to the effect of Mr. Holmes's statement?
So moved.
Mr. Borden?
That was me.
Sorry. Mr. Seidenberg.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Tom seconds. Okay, now I'll open it up for discussion.
Yeah, I think what Mr. Holmes stated was he captured very well what was discussed during the building committee meeting. I don't think there was appetite for a 2-year extension. We understand the seriousness of the present pandemic, COVID-19 matter. Though we're now open for business again, the impact this has on the economy is great. But there's still an appetite within the Germantown School District area for single-family homes. And we want to move forward, but we also understand and appreciate that if there's a second wave and there are other additional orders that may come down from the state level and or the county level, that we have to be aware of that, consider to that. So, but I believe the motion captures everything that was discussed at the building committee, and hopefully comments or captures those of the speakers this morning or this afternoon before us as well. So,
any other discussion? Mike?
Yeah. I apologize, and this is
no, you can hear me.
Doesn't work well. But I believe what Mr. Holmes mentioned captured of the discussion and the comments during the building committee meeting, where there wasn't an appetite at the building committee level, along with my colleagues on the board who did comment for giving a 2-year or a 1-year extension. But we understand the seriousness of the present pandemic. And if there is a second wave, when we hope and pray to God there isn't, but what impact that second wave may or may not have at the state level, the county level. So we're aware of that, and I think we need to be sensitive to that, and we allow some language within the contract, not a negotiation, like Mr. Holmes said, be in the contract on the sale, that it's a 1-year agreement. They got to move around, start moving forward, And I understand what you mentioned, and I too am sensitive to that. But I don't think that Viridian Home, who is a reputable builder in the southeast Wisconsin region, they don't want to sit on any land. And I understand the concerns to dust and so forth, and hopefully that will be addressed at the village level. But their reputation is online. They want to go in here with feet first. They want to do the right thing, and I think they will do the right thing for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize for this. It won't be rewritten. It'll just add additional language relative to additional language will be added in there relative to the provision of Mr. Holmes, the public health emergency, I believe you mentioned.
Correct. That it would have to be a dire situation that results in them being able to go out any farther than 1 year. It's one that I would suggest writing it that way because of what we don't know, not necessarily what we do know. I understand everybody's want and urgency for making sure to get that project moving forward sooner rather than later. Based on what I heard from Viridian and from others, I think that we can put measures in place that hold them what was stated tonight. But because of also the things that I've heard and people knowing and understanding that we are living in very unsure times, that should a dire emergency situation arise, I get why Viridian is asking for that. So based on our what I know about legal eagles, we will be able to get that language written appropriately to meet everyone's needs.
And we will make sure that authority in the language, that it will not provide wiggle room for anyone to say, okay, there's a public health emergency based on my definition. We'll make sure that it's identified in there at the state level, whoever the authority is, so that we're all protected, not just the district, but also Viridian, but also the constituents within the Germantown School District as well. So,
thank you. Yeah, I don't think we can predict the future, and we have no way of knowing what the future is going to hold in all of this, and that we couldn't have predicted how this all played out in the beginning. We had an original approval, and that's why the dirt ended up on the property, is because the approval had already been passed by the village board. They rescinded it a month later, and that's where the problems began for us. So that's a little bit of the history that we were dealing with. I mean, Viridian Homes could end up filing bankruptcy if the economy gets bad enough, and that's completely out of our control again. So we have no idea. So for now, I think Mr. Holmes' proposal is the way to go. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Opposed? That passes. And since we met earlier this evening and we have this recorded, I think I'll skip the further updates on the committee meeting. People can review it themselves. And since we were all here. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments for Brian? Okay. Moving on to Finance Committee. Michael.
Yes, the Finance Committee met earlier this evening. It was recorded. Everyone was here, so I'll just move right into the probably the main item we have, and that is the Finance Committee brings forward to the Board of Education with a positive recommendation to lease Chromebook and PC hardware in an amount not to exceed $616,810 and finance the lease purchase through a 4-year lease arrangement with U.S. Bank as presented and charged to the appropriate capitalization and lease accounts in the general fund.
That's coming to the board with a positive recommendation. Doesn't require a second. Do we have discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries.
Okay, the next item we tabled, it had to do with tuba purchases for the middle school and the high school. And lastly, Rick Erickson left some general guidelines in the general reports section, as he will be retiring later this month.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Okay, moving on to item A, discussion and action regarding swim club agreement. Mr. Holmes.
Ms. Sarah Unertle. Ms. Unertle, you're still muted. You gotta unmute yourself. There you go. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to bring forward the Rocket Aquatic Swim Club agreement again. This would be the second year we would be entering this partnership with them. And the first year was fantastic. We have a lot of our students participating on the swim club. And this is the exact same agreement that we had in year one. So I'm just bringing it forward to see if we can get it approved for our second year in this partnership.
Thank you.
Move to approve the agreement as presented.
Discussion? Second. Thank you. Discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to item B, discussion and action regarding class of 2020 activities or events. Mr. Holmes.
Yes, I would like to bring to the board's attention the, which you probably already knew, the Wisconsin Supreme Court's decision created an opportunity for Germantown School District to allow for an in-person graduation to occur on June 6th or 7th. It was one that we sent out a questionnaire to our parents and our seniors to ask them the question that if we were able to do that, would you attend? The purpose for asking just a single question is because many details would have to be worked out ahead of being able to make that happen. One of the major things that we would have to put in place is to work with the Washington Ozaki Public Health Department in order to get them to sign off on any plan that we might bring forward. At this juncture, we have the possibility of being able to work with Washington County and utilize the Washington County Outdoor Pavilion and grounds in order to hold that, which is 15 acres of space that we could use in order to put in the social distancing provisions that we would need. Again, right now, based on the things that I currently know, we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with Washington County officials and with Epic, who helps us with the live streaming, in order to talk about live streaming it to those people that couldn't be in attendance, and to also work on other details associated with making sure appropriately. Again, I don't want the board to I need for the board to understand that if we get permission to move forward with this tonight, that I don't yet know if we could get all the necessary approvals from other organizations, particularly the Public Health Department. But it is one that I with Mr. Farron and his folks, who traditionally have done the bulk of the work to bring the board's graduation ceremony forward. It's one that I think we should try. It's one that I can't guarantee to the seniors or the parents or to the board at this juncture without getting final approval at the county level from those necessary individuals. But it is one I think we need to try.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Jeff, Do we have a plan B, and are we ready to communicate what plan B will be if A does not work?
Numerous scenarios have been worked out. I think I would look to Mr. Farron to talk about that. A lot of work had been going into being able to provide something in July, but I would look to Farron to talk about what those things were. You're muted on your screen, Mr. Your Google Meet is still muted.
Yeah. While we're waiting for Mr. Farron, I will say that we did look at the Washington County Outdoor Pavilion. It's large enough to have maximum social distancing. In addition, the event, if we would go down that path, the event would be voluntary from an attendance standpoint. We would also have some provisions in place from an attendee self-care assessment. Attendees to, believe it or not, take your temperature before you come to the event, and if you're symptomatic, do not show up. We encourage mask use per White House guidance and CDC guidance. Mask use to be worn if you can't practice maximum social distancing. For those, we would also put out messaging that the high-risk category, those that are in the high-risk category, we encourage you to stay home. If you can't practice maximum social distancing or wear your mask. I know there's others that are high risk that get out and about wearing a mask and practice social distancing. They do that every day. And also, I know this will cause some heartburn amongst the colleagues on the board because this is one of the events that we look forward to at the end of the year, where we get to do a lot of handshaking with our students and give them their diploma. I think in the spirit of things, because we do live in a glass house and people are looking up to us, that we're going to have to figure out a workaround on that. Whatever we do, whatever path we go down, we will do it in a smart, thoughtful, and common sense approach. I'm sorry? Sure. Wonderful. Great. I don't know. Say it. Talk. Nope, not now. Yeah, I know there's a lot of districts that are planning later events, but we feel that we could have our event as planned as long as we are smart, thoughtful, and common sense. And everything that I identified, you were instrumental on putting this into our pandemic plan, and I applaud you for that as our healthcare professional within the district. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you. Mr. Farron, are you ready yet? Just go there. Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, I'd like to mention on the handshaking and hand sanitizer. Can you hear me? Typically, the students are staged 10 to...
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, typically the students are staged 10 or so students
All right. I think
in
the
advance.
question was from a little while ago.
Mr. Farron, Mike's got the floor. Sorry.
Yeah, typically students are staged 10 or 20 or so before the stage, so they're all ready to go. When it's their turn when their name is called. And my plan was to have a sanitizing station about 10 students back. While attendance is voluntary, hand sanitizer would be mandatory when there are about 10 students back in line. So they would use the hand sanitizer. It would be dry by the time they got to us, and we would shake their hands and hand them their diploma just like always. Now, knows it, but every year that I've handed out diplomas, I have used hand sanitizer before coming to the graduation ceremonies, just because. My feeling is, though, is that hand sanitizer is probably wore off by the time I hand the last student last diploma. So what I would suggest is the students use the hand sanitizer. That way our hands are, you might say, renewed, but we would also have hand sanitizer also that we would use in between quite safely, and it not be an issue.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but I also am very sensitive to the many emails I got from moms and dads asking that question. And I certainly don't want to do something that they wouldn't want their student to do. And we may have some colleagues on the board that don't want to feel, at this point in time, they don't feel comfortable doing that. But I would feel comfortable doing that, but I certainly don't want to put that hurdle in front of something to have a successful celebration. But we will iron out all those details going forward. But the cool thing is, Tammy signed off on it, and we'll get others to hopefully go down that path. And I think, because I do think it's the right thing to do, from not only for our kids and our moms and dads, but also for our community. I think it's a good shot in the arm. We need to celebrate. And what better way of celebrating than the class of 2020? So I think it's going to be a pretty cool event. So, Mr. Farron.
So if I recall the question, since I didn't hear the other discussion with the technology issue, it was about a plan B. I believe that's where the last thing was. So actually, the original plan before it was brought from the board to try to run this close to the normal date was similar to what other schools in Greater Metro and others are doing. We're trying to get past that June 30th date to be able to have something on their property. And in my conversations with multiple students, that was part of what they were interested in. And so the conversation began about the Acta Stadium, where you could do social distancing. Based on the provisions, it would take up pretty much the entire field to be able to do that. Our graduating class as of right now is 322. So if you do the math and figure out the square footage that's necessary for that, it's pretty extensive. And so obviously indoor was going to be a challenge, even though we have a huge field house. So again, Mr. Holmes alluded to it, graduation in my time here, I've been here 16 years, has been planned by the principal's assistant, who right now is Julie Cull, and Susan Bass, the lead school counselor. I know that plans have gone forward. I know that Mr. Soderberg and Mr. Holmes have been working on this. I'm going out to that venue tomorrow. In terms of a plan B, I think that the plan B, if we're unable to do it, would kind of revert back to the original plan that at least the high school team came up with in regard to selecting a date in July, having an outdoor graduation ceremony at Acta Stadium. Again, I'm not going to pick on Avi these here, but we've had multiple conversations. He and I have worked on things in terms of different options. I feel bad for the kids that, again, we're going off-site. They do want to be here, and they haven't been back to the property other than to maybe pick up a few things since they walked out of here on March 13th. So again, this is a board function. This is your deal. We'll help you in any way we can with that type of thing. Because I just feel, I feel remiss if I didn't say it. is that there are students that we're hoping to have an event on school property, which I know is not possible until after June 30th. So with that, again, I guess that would revert to the plan B to answer your question. But obviously, given a lot of thought, been working on a lot of different options during this. And if the board is going to go forward with the June 6th, then we'll have to work to do that in a very responsible manner and be very flexible with how that's done.
Playing the devil's advocate and knowing that things can change on a dime, do we have that plan for if we cannot manage a physical in-person graduation? Because I think we're looking at the standpoint of the district property is closed through June 30th, but you never know what's going to happen in July. So I think knowing that there is some other practice in place other than in person.
Yes. So obviously, in all the different scenarios, again, I'll be honest, we waited for when it went to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, rather than go forth with all of the planning of that, waiting for that piece, which then, has been resolved. I want an in-person graduation just as much as everybody else. I feel bad for these kids. And as an educator, they need to be given as much of the same opportunity as others before them. So been hopeful for that. But to answer your question, we did, again, we worked on some things with the virtual format. Probably not willing to share that publicly yet, but we're working on different pictures, different things from the yearbook that we could utilize to do something from a virtual format. Those things have to be all fleshed out, but the work has started on that part already. With, again, the hope.
I personally would love to see a graduation here. I mean, I agree that this is what's the big deal for the kids. It's here, right? This is where they have spent the last 12 years of their life in this town. And they should be able to have that graduation here. That being said, if it is, the decision to move on with the 6th or 7th, what we need to also consider, obviously, our kids' safety is the most concern that we have. But if staff is involved in this, that is also not a mandatory thing, right? That they have an option to not be involved in this. And we have to think about that too. If staff chooses not to help us with this event, how are we going to make everything happen?
Right. Yep.
And I do appreciate that, because there are staff members who have health concerns. And when this was first presented, that it looked like the board was going down this road, I'll be real honest. I mean, I'm going to be honest, that the board wanted to go down this road. The question comes up, okay, well, why does it need to be that date? I guess, I don't know if someone can answer that question. I know that the original date was the 7th. What is the hurry to be able to do it somewhere else versus to do it at Datka Stadium, which graduations used to be there prior to my time here. It used to be outside. But I guess, part of that is the safety for the kids. I mean, and again, the full board doesn't see all the emails. I know Mr. Soderberg saw at least one in regard to concerns about safety, and are you going to be doing this with the shaking hands and those types of concerns. But I don't know if all of you see all of those different things. They usually go to either myself or the superintendent. So I'm glad you brought that up in the safety, because there are concerns that some feedback from the survey was basically it was a survey that only gave you one option. Yes, it's yes, no option, but there are no other dates presented. So when you create a survey, and again, as an educator, I do this a lot of times, if you only have really one option, you're probably going to choose that option. And they did. The rate was very high in terms of return. But some of the feedback from it was, well, if there had been something along the lines of something in July, I probably would have selected that. Again, we don't know that because we didn't, the survey wasn't created that way. But in regard to, again, different options, again, if the board wishes to go forward with the 6th, to do that. If we're not able to do that for whatever factors there may be, then similar to other schools, looking at something in July. The preference, if it would be outside, for those of you that will be up on stage with me, would probably be at night, an evening ceremony. Based on temperature and those types of things, you have to think about, the people that will attend. So probably a Saturday evening with the rain makeup date as well. And they're different times other than the first week of July. Most aren't doing it that time because of the 4th and how that falls. Different options for July as well. If something happens where we can't do that, then we have to move to the virtual format. It's not the road I wanted to go down, but if we have to go down that road, we'll do that. So,
referencing having at Datka Stadium, I heard that maybe you could verify or not that because of the limited space that we have for the number of students and attendees, that we would have to have 2 events. Is that accurate?
The thought was to do it in the most safe manner. The initial thought was that we would run 2, we would split the alphabet like we do, and we would run 2 back-to-back. We would do something with, so for example, like the valedictorian presentations, that we would videotape them. I have a meeting with them tomorrow online with the valedictorians, senior class president, and the student council president. Will be part of that meeting where we would do the same sort of format for both so that we could clear it. That was more along the lines of how many guests are we going to have? If we did the entire class of 322, had to spread them out by 6 feet and that type of thing. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the entire football field. And this is normally in a graduation, my understanding is they'd set it up at about the stage at the 50-yard line, and you'd be straight on with what would be the home section. Wouldn't be able to do that. We have to put the stage pretty much by the goalpost on the north end and go that way, and basically have them spread out if that's what we need to do. Again, if that's what the health department says we need to do, that would put us down to probably, just trying to do the math, probably 2 guests. And if we went to 2 ceremonies back to back, say, 4:30 and 7, or whatever it may be, we toyed with the time frame for it, increase the amount of guests we could have by going to 2.
Yeah, so personally, I don't think that would be a very good experience. Having 2 events, not being part of my other classmates. So that's kind of why we started thinking of an additional venue, outside venue. I know we looked at, and Mr. Holmes, you got approval to use one of the parks, but then we started talking about, I think this was your recommendation, the fairground. And we said, why not go down that path? And we did have the 2 dates were open in June. And again, as long as we do it in a thoughtful, smart, and common sense way, we've had graduation at the fairgrounds up until last year when we brought it back here at the field house. And that we had, 7 years, I believe it was? 6 or 7 years?
2013 was the first one.
Yeah. So, yeah, it would be great to have it here in the field house, but you rule that out because of lack of social distancing. And if we have it at the football field and we could have all the kids on the football field, but only 2 guests, that doesn't make sense because the emails I've been getting, I don't know if anybody here has been getting the emails. This is a big deal. I mean, they want their parents to come. They want the grandparents to come. They want the siblings to come. And we don't have the space for that, but there's 15 acres over at the fairgrounds. So that's kind of why it went down that path. So I love this conversation we're having. So this is great. So comments? I know one school district is having their graduation at Miller Park. Talk about maximum social distancing. So,
do they share with you the cost of that?
No.
Okay. Would you like to know? It's $25,000 plus.
Wow. And I believe the cost of the fairgrounds is $100.
Yeah, it'll be around $900.
Yeah, there you go. So, Michael?
Yeah, I'd just like to mention, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Graduation is for all students. There's no question about that. I don't consider June hurrying up, but the reason for June 6th was so that we could have the rain date on June 7th. And it's also my understanding that we have 8 students going into the military. I happen to know one of them. He doesn't know how much I admire that he's going into the military. But for those 8 students, they will not be here in July. They'll be gone. So we really, really need to pull this off if we can. 6th, weather permitting, of course. And those 8 students will learn what it means to swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America, more so than any of us probably in this room know right now. So we need to do it for those students, and of course all students. And that's about it.
And that's, in my previous district, we had the girls soccer team playing in the state championship on a Saturday at the same time as graduation. So 15 of them weren't able to be there. So those things happen. I not minimizing, I understand it, but you know, in the planning of this in a unique circumstances, it was kind of along the lines of, and there's going to be some that are going to choose not to participate. There's going to be that too, based on the circumstances. So trying to find the best fit for all 322, you know.
Well, my challenge for him is this old guy is going to shake as many hands as I possibly can. If I can go, they can go. And as everybody here knows, I believe I've already had it already. It was nothing compared to the sinus infection it triggered afterwards. It wasn't that big of a deal. I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm just telling you, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Okay, further comments, questions? Amanda?
I think as long as we make sure that we know, remind staff and families that their safety is our utmost concern, and it's their choice to participate.
Yep. Further comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Let me try this. Make a motion to instruct administration to work with local and county officials as needed to move forward with planning an outdoor graduation ceremony to be held on Saturday, June 6th at a site to be announced at a later date.
Second.
It's mine. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Fern. Moving on to item C, discussion of possible action regarding district's economic relief measures. Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Nowak.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. In terms of economic relief measures, we want to move back briefly to March 16th. That was our first day of school closure. And remind the group that as we approached employment issues with support staff and coaches, we did so in a periodic manner. So we worked in segments. Our first commitment was to continue to provide compensation to employ our coaches and support staff up through the month of March at that time. And April. It was actually through April. And then the next time we met as a group, we talked about continuing that through the month and up through this meeting. So we needed to come to a decision about employment and compensation through the remainder of the year. Through this process, we've looked very closely at local, regional, statewide, and federal perspectives. We've looked at unemployment compensation. In that regard, we have vetted it through various legal groups. We've listened to other districts in terms of their perspectives in regard to unemployment. And we firmly believe that continuing to compensate both our support staff and our coaches through the remainder of the year, the next few weeks, that is the appropriate move. In regard to support staff, we've engaged them through the process. We've had them log the work that they're doing. We've heard wonderful things about their support of teachers and learning through the process, and we see that continuing over the next several weeks. in regard to coaches, we've heard stories of the support that they've provided through virtual training and those kinds of things. We see great value in continuing that. We would ask that tonight you confirm that action.
Thank you. I entertain a motion.
Move to confirm compensating the parties as presented through the end of the school year.
I'll second.
Discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item E, discussion and action regarding teacher retirement. Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Nowak.
Thank you. We have one retirement to bring forward. This was not a late retirement by any means. It was one that was given kind of amidst our other retirements, and it's one that we've planned for and have known about. Don Monnet is a mathematics teacher at Germantown High School. He's requesting that the board accept his decision to retire at the end of the year. Don has served as a mathematics teacher at GHS for the past 19 years. Also, I learned during his first year he taught science. A very interesting person. Prior to the field of education, he spent 25 years in an engineering and science career. I personally have enjoyed working with Don. I've been in plenty of meetings with him where he's always acted in just a very, very professional manner, committed to his to the work at hand in terms of educating kids, but also very committed to seeing that the teachers around him are supported and that they're held to a high standard of continual learning. So with that, I would ask that you approve his request for retirement at the conclusion of the 1920 school year.
Thank you.
Approve the request for retirement at the conclusion of the 2019-20 school year for Don Monnet and thank him for his many years of service to our kids and district.
Thank you. Second? Mike? Thank you.
Second.
Discussion?
Hey, Bob.
Tom? Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
I'm not sure if this is a question for Brenda O'Brien or if Mike, maybe you can answer this. Does the retirement of this individual impact any offerings that we have at the high school? Like this person's the only one qualified or certified to teach a certain class?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you.
Hey, I would also like to mention, I'm really impressed. I don't know Don, but I'm really impressed by his 25 years in engineering and science career. And what that means is he's an individual that sounds like he worked out in industry somewhere and knew the real world. And these are the instructors that are really, really good in the classroom. I think any of us that have attended college classes, we know the difference between a college professor, for example, and I'll include high school in that same category. We know the difference between someone that's taught and worked in industry and someone that has only taught and only ever been in school. So those with the real world experience are really good teachers, and engineering is a great category to pull somebody from industry and into a school system like this to teach. So thank you, Don, and have a happy, healthy, safe, and warm retirement, and may it be many, many years long. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to item E, discussion and action and possible action regarding return to schools plan version 5. Mr. Holmes.
Yes. The Infectious Disease and Pandemic Working Group met to develop and review a working draft plan document for processes and protocols to be in place for the return to schools, workplaces after the public school closures end on June 30th. The attached document is a work in progress and highly dependent upon the action of others at several other levels: local, county, state, and federal. Our risk management consultant is impressed by the amount of forethought captured at this juncture. The draft is being brought forward at this time to allow for board consideration ahead of final approval at one of your June meetings, hopefully June 8th, which is dependent upon finalization at the other levels previously referenced. At this juncture, I would like to also thank Tammy Mamayak and Dr. Dirk Steinert for their assistance in helping develop this plan. Greatly appreciated. Mr. Soderberg also sits on that particular working group. His background in the area of facility security and safety is greatly appreciated. A lot of what you currently see in this plan has been developed based on following best practices to the greatest extent possible, given everything that we currently know about the situation. I would love it if other board members have any, after reading it, please provide us any suggestions that you may have. I know that each of you are in locations and conduct yourself in businesses that allow for you to provide some insight in that regard as well. So please do take time to review it further. And if you have anything to provide in terms of input, please send it our way. So,
questions, comments? Sure.
I think probably my only comment would be, and I don't believe I saw it in here, is if there would be something within the how all of this rolls out. I would not want to see the teaching staff wearing a mask as they're engaging their class, especially for young children, and as they're developing social interactions and reading expressions and things like that. So I don't like this virtual experience. I think then that's something we would maybe need to consider. And I just, I think the prudent use or not use of masks to allow the best educational experience.
And I too would be able, I would prefer that. However, it's one of those things for me where I do believe that we'll have to consider closely what the CDC recommends. And also, again, we've leaned heavily on our district nurse in that regard on many of these things. She's been a tremendous help with that. For the kids, you're saying, I'm sure Ms. O'Brien understands and would echo that same sentiment, because how important it is to be able to see someone speak is extremely important.
Yeah.
What I do know right now, based on the mask, is it's not necessarily so much for the kids, but the adults that are working in the systems. ABC just had a recent poll that came out in regard to parents and whether or not they'd be willing to send students back in the fall. Right now, that national survey is at 69% of parents say they won't send their kids back. You're seeing similar experiences in Europe right now, where around 70% of parents are keeping their kids out of school in those nations that did return to school. All I can tell you right now, what I know about this coming fall, is that it's going to be a very interesting time.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. It's a very fluid situation. We don't know what we don't know. I know the CDC just issued new guidance this week for schools return to work, or return to schools. There's different phases and gating requirements in there. Even if you follow the White House's plan in phase 3, as long as the gating requirements are required, basically we're back to normal. Not the new normal, but the normal. So will we be there this fall? Only time will tell. So, but I agree with you. Further comments? Mike. No.
Mike, please mute at this juncture. I think he's going to have to reset it. You're going to have to reset it, Jim. Mike, if you would, go ahead and mute it there. Thank you.
It's good. No.
Well, and I'm not necessarily concerned about it being a shock to them, more so than the teaching element and being able to see the teacher's full reaction. And obviously we know that speech isn't clear with wearing a mask. And so if the teacher felt that they needed some sort of protective face covering, maybe one of those plastic shields then in lieu of a mask might be a better option. And I certainly would not want to see our kids have to wear masks. I think it's really unhealthy for the amount that people are touching them and everything else. I'm just waiting for all the lawsuits of the places that mandated wearing the masks. What is this going to look like a year from now?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. My experience was the requirement I have at work is to wear a mask if you're not able to social distance. I was in a lab, had safety glasses on. Another employee and myself were not social distancing. We were asked to put our masks on. I put the mask on. My safety glasses fogged up. I'm working with power on. I'm like, okay, safety glasses or mask? The mask came off. I could not wear it with glasses. And these are the type of problems that people are going to run into. I couldn't put the mask on in such a way that it didn't fog my safety glasses up. So I'm not working in a lab without safety glasses on.
And we could talk about that for our kids too, right? I mean,
yes.
They could potentially wear safety glasses in a sense. And let's be real, the elementary kid level, they are not keeping a social distance. That is not, it's not even acceptable. They need human touch. They need that human interaction to thrive. So that's just not something that I hope we have to deal with.
And I can speak for my daughter, who's a new teacher this year in a school district out west. She needs that interaction too. So it works both ways. Okay, other further comments before we move on? So if you have any thoughts, comments, additions, please let Mr. Holmes know. I do know that what the pandemic team has done at Germantown, it's very mature in terms of their planning, preparations, and their readiness. And they are certainly not behind the 8 ball, but they're ahead of the 8 ball. So I applaud Tammy and Jeff and everyone else on the pandemic team. So good job. Okay, moving on to item F, discussion and action to appoint community representative to the building committee. Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Soderberg.
Okay, every year, not every year, every 2 years, this comes up on the agenda item per board policy, and we do have Mark Honke. He's our community representative. He's been doing this for several years now, and in consultation with Jane this week, I asked the question, when is he up? And he is up tonight. So that's why this is on the agenda tonight. So I'll entertain a motion to have Mark continue to be our community representative. There you go.
Second.
Discussion? No discussion? Yeah.
I'll just mention, I mentioned it to him in the building committee meeting, and jokingly, of course, I said, couldn't we find somebody else? Which, of course, he laughed at, but he didn't know it was up. He was up for tonight, and anyway, I said, yeah, you are, and we'll be voting on it later. So he knows about it now, but it was not part of the building committee meeting agenda. So
yeah, it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be at the board level, and I will say that Mark's been he's rather mature in the role. He does come from a professional background in terms of building. He does add a lot of subject matter expertise to the building committee, and he's very well respected amongst his fellow colleagues on the building committee. So
agree.
Okay, further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to item G, discussion and action regarding summer school 2020. Mr. Holmes.
Yes, Ms. O'Brien.
Can everyone hear me? Yep. Okay. So the proposal for you, before you this evening, are some of the latest, and maybe it's even changed since last week when I submitted it. So I'm working through how to schedule summer school for this summer. A lot of the same concerns and suggestions and ideas were raised with graduation, as well as some of the start of the school year things. So many of these things have already been raised. So really the two proposals before you this evening, one would be to run as many of the classes as we can through distance learning and continue that. But run it the July 6th through the 31st. Reason being is that for some of the classes we would need to re-register students, and we would have to determine teacher contracts based on how the classes fill, and therefore allowing the opportunity to have enough time in between registration and the actual start date. So running 4 weeks of virtual summer school, July 6th through the 31st, with the week-long classes, if we could run them August 3rd through the 7th. So just reversing the order. We typically run the week-long courses first, with the 4 week-long sessions running after that. As you can see in the proposal, the high school summer school course offerings would kind of be as scheduled if we could. And obviously some of these, especially like the physical education for credit, it would be wonderful if they could meet in person. However, given all of the circumstances and the recommendations, especially around the county health department, they're looking at not having face-to-face instruction happening this summer. So the other proposals would obviously then be that we would have to cancel some of the classes that could not be run through distance learning, or modify some classes. So the new proposals that are found on page 3 of the document would be some of the courses that we could possibly replace other courses with that would be better suited for distance learning versus a face-to-face format. Again, all of the registrations would have to be somewhat redone with those that have already registered, given priority. And so that would have to start probably early June. The second proposal would be kind of that other side of what we would be able to do, and that would be base classes. Again, being mindful of social distancing. Now, the recommendation that I just received this evening is that they are not recommending face-to-face instruction at all in the foreseeable future, even after June 30th. So I'm now a little bit more concerned about proposal number 2, which would be the face-to-face classes, because as we just mentioned, some of the social distancing just wouldn't be able to happen, or we wouldn't be able to ensure that. And then the cleanliness and the sanitizing of things as well would be somewhat difficult. But we would run, if we could, face-to-face classes that same time frame, because it would be after the June 30th date. That I have recommended or have thought about would be kind of a hybrid model, obviously, of some distance learning classes and some face-to-face, with the caveat that some of them would just not be able to be run at all this summer. But if we did need to limit the number of students in the building, which is what some of the health organizations are recommending, I was thinking of having cohort groups of students. So let's say there would be 45 students in a building, and those 45 students would be taking the same 3 classes in 15 person sections. So they would travel from one class to the other class to the other class, and we would keep about 45 students in one of the schools, and then offer about 3 classes there, and that would minimize the interactions that students would have. Then, instead of running the 1,000 or so students in Kennedy Middle School that we typically do during summer school. So those are some of the options as well that I've thought about in terms of what we could do and what this could look like for this summer.
Brenda, what an awesome job you're doing in planning. This is a lot of details in flux.
Very much so.
Do we have any inkling as to how many people would actually do virtual? Because I can only imagine from the kids' standpoint, they're thinking, oh my God, we just did this all these weeks online. They aren't going to want to do more online during the summer. The other thing is, I like the thought of trying to get like 45 kids together at a various school, but then what are we opening ourselves up to if we have to use multiple facilities in terms of additional cleaning, where we wouldn't necessarily need to have our staff be doing the extra sanitation?
Can I speak to that?
Go ahead.
I would recommend that the Germantown School District for its summer of 2020 goes strictly to virtual. Currently, no. To your point, the social distancing measures that would likely have to be put in place, while we're no longer using the Badger bounce back plan, it is sort of a guideline in regard to social distancing. And if you think of it in terms of phases and the things that it would allow to get at the class sizes that we're talking about, I do believe it would. I haven't done the cost-benefit analysis, but given what I do currently know about how those things work, it would likely not be a cost-benefit to the district in order to do those summer school classes in that form. I think what you do, given the latitude that's been provided by the state to secure summer school funding through virtual means, that is the direction that I would go.
However, saying that, you know, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Holmes, and I applaud you, Brenda, for what you said. I do like your proposal of 45 per school, because, you know, we need to test our model out going forward for the fall session. And as part of the pandemic plan, it does include enhanced cleaning of the high touch points. So that is part of the plan as it is. Now, is there a cost associated with that? Of course there is. But we should be doing that regardless whether we're in a pandemic or in the seasonal flu season. We should be doing that enhanced cleaning per CDC guidelines, and also following EPA of the high touch points. So I would love to see us go down on that path of 45 per school, because we're going to have to do it anyway in fall. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Holmes. I get it. I understand.
Okay, because if money was not an issue, if, you know, the almighty dollar is at play here, and it is one. You just heard from Representative Knodel about what you're staring at from the state, that they see it as a first step to freeze the budget next year. I appreciate him being here, and I appreciate him being honest, but I was not too confident in his response regarding the things associated with PPE, the things associated with cleaning supplies that are going to be on the school district. It's not that I would suggest that the board move in that direction to make a point of, it's one where I don't want the district to cut off its nose to spite its face, because come fall, you are, I believe, going to be put in a position where unless knowing what I currently know about the state of Wisconsin, I do believe that legislators are going to work extremely hard to have at the very least in place a hybrid sort of situation where they will likely allow those students back into the schools. And that we will probably be in a situation where you're likely going to have to provide hybrid services. So having stated that, I think where you can save money, you should.
Yeah, I know Representative Canola was going to speak tonight in terms of what was announced. I believe I'm accurate with this. In fact, he confirmed it, that the Wisconsin university system, their plans are to come back with in-person learning at all the universities statewide. It's going to be a domino effect for everything. I do know that at least what you see in the media in terms of the negotiations at the governor level and the Senate going forward the path forward, they did talk about K through 12. They do want to have K through 12 open because they don't want to have kids at home with parents and parents can't go to work. They want that. The interesting thing that's happening in Europe, and you alluded to that, is they're going back to in-person learning as we speak. And I think we're going to learn a lot from that in all those countries there. And you saw the data that I sent you, that we're learning a lot as we speak. And there's not a standardized approach, which is a good thing. Countries are doing things differently, and that's a good thing because you could measure that and find out what the best practices are, and we could learn from that when we open our schools here in Wisconsin.
Right. And I
understand what you're saying about the budget. I understand completely. But to Sarah's point about our kids have just gone through weeks and weeks of distance learning, and now we want them to do that again. That's a tough pill to swallow. That's all I'm saying.
I absolutely agree with you. It's one of the things that I do worry about, that if we do go to all virtual for the summer, you're not going to see as much participation as you have seen in the past. Brenda's done a fantastic job over the years of developing, I would say, a model summer school program for Germantown School District. And definitely the public health emergency has changed things tremendously. To your point about what's going on in Europe and other countries right now, you are seeing a lot of schools being forced to move towards hybrid models right away, and that's not cheap.
Well, and Brenda, do we have a break-even model as to, with virtual, how many students we would need enrolled in order to run each of these sections?
Yeah, I've asked I don't have the numbers right now, but I've asked our comptroller to be working on that, and also our, incoming business manager for those, because I think that would be important. Yes, to your point about that. Yes.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say too, though, if we were to go down the road of the face-to-face, I just want to be mindful that it would have to look different, and parents would have to understand that the classes that are offered in each of the buildings aren't going to be very robust. To Jeff's point, I won't be able to run all of those classes. It would be very limited, and so parents would just have to understand that it would look different, and they wouldn't be able to necessarily have the choices that they're maybe accustomed to at this point.
So Brenda, I'm going to put you on the spot, knowing all that you know right now. What do you recommend?
I have to follow some of the health department's guidelines, and especially what I received this afternoon. I would say right now I would lean toward the virtual classes if you had to put me on the spot. I understand, the virtual school fatigue, and I certainly see it in my own daughter, so I understand it. And that's the reason, too, for the July date versus starting right away the week after school ends. So maybe with that little bit of a break, couple weeks break in June, and then all of August, for that before we would return to school. That's kind of a reason, too, for those dates as opposed to the ones that were confirmed or approved previously.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Tammy. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, we've had a lot of discussion on summer school, so I'll entertain a motion. And I guess, I get to Jeff's point and Brenda's point, probably the right thing at this point in time is distance learning. But I would love to do some type of offshoot of in-person, because we're going to be doing it anyway in the fall. But if this is not the appropriate time to do that, I understand that. So.
Well, could I recommend that maybe we do something with the younger students, like our jumping into kindergarten, which is our pre-kindergarten students. Maybe could we say something like late July, early August, or even mid-August, and even if it has to be 2 weeks back versus a full 4-week session, just to start some of those younger students and be able to give them an experience prior to school starting face-to-face.
Cool. Tom?
Yeah, as I was reading the background preparing for the meeting tonight, I really like the phase 2 plan. I mean, it gets the students back to something normal. It gives us a trial run for the fall, but after hearing some of the conversations, I'm not sure that that's the best thing at this point.
Yep, understand.
Mr. Soderberg, if I could interject, I think that may be a possibility, that if you're looking to test the waters in that regard, and I'm probably going to get all kinds of emails for saying this. However, it is one that the kids would probably be safer. It would be taking good care of the adults that are working with them and those types of things. But in order to test, I do believe that would be a good test for us. And if it could, later in July or in the 1st of August, I think it does give you greater preparation time.
The only concern I would have with that is the social distancing that may not be accustomed to.
They won't be accustomed to that, let's be honest.
That's right.
My suggestion is, if we do decide that it's definitely towards August. We give kids, students, or our students and our parents some time to digest that, obviously. Right before school starts, the kids can get their feet wet with kindergarten.
Brenda, you okay with August?
I'm okay with August. I would really have to rely on our teaching staff, so making sure I have teaching staff available those dates.
Got it. Okay. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to move forward with summer school proposal number 1 as presented, with the exception of modifying jumping into kindergarten to being in person.
In August.
Wonderful.
I will second that.
Great, thank you. Discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to item 9, closed session. The board will entertain a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to sections 1985 1E, F, and G, as well as 118.125 of the Wisconsin statutes to discuss retired employees' health insurance issues and GEA negotiations. The board may take action in closed session if necessary or appropriate, or entertain a motion to reconvene into open session to take further action if necessary and appropriate, and or entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
I move we go into closed session for the reasons stated.
Second.
Discussion? No discussion. Roll call, please.
Medved. Loth.
Yes.
Borden. Barney.
Yes.
Reineman.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
And Sederberg.
Yes. So we're adjourned at 9:38. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Please drive home safe and be safe and healthy.